Hello and welcome back. I am Darcy Darkness. This is Confessions from the Dark Side. How are you all in this wonderful community? Today we are covering Confessions from the Dark Side presents the underappreciated scares that be from any sort of movie in the genre that we talk about. Horror, sci-fi, fantasy, etc. And how a lot of the underappreciated movies that don't get the recognition that they should, just because maybe they don't have the budget or they're not a big blockbuster, they can be just as good, if not better, than some of the blockbusters that we are subjected to at the cinema, and on streaming services. So I'm going to read the disclaimer and then we can get into it. We are full of so much adult content that some may think it's unnecessary. Some of you may think this isn't needed. If you are one of those people, then thanks for checking us out, but I will say this only once. If you can't stand the heat, then get the fuck out of my kitchen. Now, for everyone else who likes what we have here, then regular scheduled programming will continue. Shall we get started? Are we ready? What are we covering today? Well, the movies that were just as good, if not better, than the blockbusters. They may not have had the budget or the big names, but the story and the talents of everyone involved in the project, well, this is what made these movies the underrated gems they have become today. And we are going to delve into some of these. Some of you may know, some of you may not, or maybe you've seen them all and you understand all these movies deserve a better representation and the respect that they deserve. When we see underrated and underappreciated horror movies, what comes to mind? Well, first of all, Devil or D Evil. If you remember that, it was the front cover of the movie is an elevator because the majority of the movie is set in the elevator. And it goes, the story starts off dark and dank, and the way I like it, of course. And the cover is an elevator. The movie, everything happens in a small space, majority of it. Some in itself would see fear in an elevator that is stuck, as it's a small enclosed space with strangers, and who knows how long they would be stationary and how many would survive. Yes, survive. So it covers a few different aspects in horror, and all is filmed as if, under the microscope, seems very innocent, then shit starts to get real. The objective of this movie was to teach lessons and that the actions have consequences. Why are these chosen few in this elevator, you may ask, at this time here, and why are they connected and why now? It's sinister and incredibly well written and very smart in the execution, as a jumper at the start is causing his own drama outside of the building. They are in the elevator, so the detective in charge of the investigation, who's fighting his own grief with demons he has because he's lost his wife and his family. He has a challenge against the clock to find out who each of these people are in the elevator and try and resolve what's going on before it's too late. This movie has suspense, fear, and terror at the helm, so if you like fast paced stories with a strong backbone, then this one is for you. It's really thrill seeking. Well, it was for me. Then we have, I'm really getting into my favourites really, really early on. Might as well change it up, I suppose. Psycho Gorman. I have talked about this plenty. It's a sci-fi horror movie. Brilliant. It's available on Amazon Prime. So here on Earth, some kids find a gem. It's shiny. They are kids, so they're like cool. And it was in their garden. And wonder what the fuck it actually is and what the fuck does it do. Unknown to the children, that this stone is actually the control of something, an entity from another world, and whoever possesses it hold the key and the control of none other than Psycho Gorman himself. This intergalactic creature is something you got to see for yourself for his fascination and love for the Hunky Boys. Yes, I said that. Magazines that he protects with his life and will take you out if you destroy his Hunky Boys, and causes all sorts of carnage and terror on this town. The violence is not just genius but over the top and hysterical. They must fend off assassins from another universe in the small town, and it's a movie you won't regret watching. It's silly, it's fun, it's gory as fuck, it's Psycho fucking Gorman after all. Love this movie. It doesn't really need any more of an introduction than it's Psycho fucking Gorman, and it's hilarious. It kind of gives me Peter Jackson, Brain Dead vibes, bad taste feels. So if you like that kind of, you'll love Psycho Gorman. The Night Flyer. This is Stephen King. And there's a few Stephen King ones on here today and Dean Koontz, so get ready. This movie is one of my many Stephen King movies that I love. It was out in the 90s. It's very dark. It starts off in a small aircraft and the night sky. It's pitch black. The crimes of killing this entity, its victims, by travelling via a small private jet as you do, to stalk and kill its victims in quiet rural airports. An investigative reporter has been tracking these crimes and murders, and he thinks the killer is a vampire. Of course, because that's the only explanation, isn't it? So it's kind of like, I would say, like the National Enquirer. If you don't really know what a tabloid is, I would say the Daily Mail in the UK is more of a tabloid now than it is anything else. Doesn't actually print anything newsworthy, but hey. But it's basically a tabloid newspaper where you would literally say like, my cat has a beard or something like that. That's pretty much who this guy works for. Well, it's basically, I laugh at journalism. You're really not a journalist. This also ripped the piss out of the original like Men in Black movie, like with Will Smith and Tommy Lee. I don't think Tommy Lee Jones, sorry. So I don't actually. It was very just. It kind of reminded me of that this movie, even though it isn't a big budget, has a good story, not bad acting, but the quality is meh. Not anywhere near as bad as the Langoliers though, because that is god awful. It's got to be one of the worst CGI I've ever seen. If you like mysterious vampire plot twists that seriously are over exaggerated, then go for it. So Thinner, again, right back to Stephen King straight away. Again, this was written by Stephen King, but under another writer name, which is Richard Bachman. Again, he does use a lot of his short stories are under Richard Bachman. So Thinner again is another actions have consequences and how curses happen for a reason. I never trust a pie. Again, Dean Winchester would not. He would just eat pie and think of the consequences later. But don't eat the pie. Don't take it, because that, my friend, will not only get you thin, but also kill you and anyone who touches it. Like, that's what happens at the end of the movie. Sorry, spoiler. Not really sorry, because the movie is fucking ancient. So if you eat it, you pretty much end up dying. So is it really worth it to eat the pie? At what cost? So think before you take the gift. Is it really worth it? The Signal. Now, there's a few movies called The Signal, but the one I'm talking about was out in, I think, 2008, and it kind of freaked me out. It's based on an actual signal that's from like electronic devices, like radio as well, and television, and it's just weird. I didn't find it as much horror, but it is horror technically because it does tick and check a ton of boxes that would be psychological, I think, kind of torture as well because of the noise. Obviously, the signal, it affected my ears, so it caused issues. So it freaked me out. Again, not really a scare, but definitely had me weirdly paranoid. It's like three stories, different times, going through the same sort of realizations about a transmission that is well causing havoc to everyone who hears it. So technology, the transmission can affect every mobile device, radio and television for that matter. They don't know it's turned the majority of people who experience the mysterious transmission to change. And by change, I mean they become crazy killers and nothing can stop them. It's just pure carnage. Anyone being kind of affected, it's not just a random person, just anyone. It could be like 10 people in a room, 8 people are infected and 2 people aren't, but those 2 people are usually the ones that end up getting killed. They don't know where it originated from, who it was created by, or why it was released. So if you want a horror movie that makes you think, or overthink in this case, and become a technophobe, then please sit down and tune in into this one and you won't be disappointed. Again, Stephen King, Storm of the Century. I love this. It's more of a mini series, quite a long one. I love it. Again, amazing cover as well. It's like purple lightning with a creepy entity, which is what the story is actually about. So yeah, there's many Stephen King stories that have never been big budget movies or blockbusters. I don't think many of these things have been blockbuster, to be honest. There's been the odd ones that have been released and they've, depending on who's actually been directing them and adapting the book to a screenplay, some of them are very good and other ones are not. They're not even worth toilet paper, to be honest. But Storm of the Century is underrated for many reasons, and I think it's just because in the 90s, between 90s and 2000s, so it was like so many stories of not only Stephen King but Dean Koontz. It's just it felt like it was saturated with Stephen King and saturated with other writers as well, because they were trying to get the biggest book adaptation into like blockbuster movie, and a lot of the time they failed and didn't even become B-list. C, D, E, I can go down the alphabet for a lot of these things, but if you haven't seen Storm of the Century, I will explain what it's about now. So another, I would really like it to be remade or redeveloped, but at the moment I'm not in the best place with Mr. King. And yes, I've talked about a few of these movies in this podcast already, but when he took the support of the turd and continuously tried to promote the turd, I just can't it broke my heart because being a fan of his for so long that he could actually support someone like her. So I'm still not in the best place with him right now. The wreckage that he made of the Stand remake. Again, a huge part of me. Love the dark and strange and magical. In Storm of the Century, we see a random stranger appear in a small isolated town of all things. Again, a pattern. If it's not in Maine, usually, it usually is. Again, out of the blue, he becomes the person of terror and trauma to the people who live there. And for what reason? Well, his own gratification. Is there any other reason a random mysterious stranger appears and then unexplained shit starts to happen? Well, retrace your steps, people. When someone new appears, please be careful, please be aware, and please take care. Some mysterious strangers aren't who they seem to be. It's better to be a paranoid nutcase than be a sheep and end up massacred with the flock now, isn't it? We have some of the worst weather here and a mysterious stranger, okay, plot thickens. Again, give me what I want and you will be spared. Oh, okay. Why now? Why here? And why the actual fuck have the townspeople? What have they done to deserve this? For this judgment and his behaviour and the way he is killing and tormenting the town, he isn't there to reward you for good behaviour, that's for sure. Or is he? Again, if you like actions that have consequences, punishments, and terror, then go for it. You will not be disappointed again. So, Bubba Hotep, again, this tends to come up a lot. It is a Bruce fucking Campbell gem. It is awesome. Again, stepping away from Evil Dead, but still staying in the horror genre. It wouldn't be a podcast without us mentioning one of his movies. So here we go. He is marvelous in everything, and he is just one of my heroes. If you weren't, and also Lunar loves him too. So maybe not in the same way he goes, but I do. But hey, you never know. The man is just a mood. Bubba Hotep, well, he's the mummy assisted living facility. Why? Why? Well, first off, Bruce fucking Campbell was an old guy who claims to be the real Elvis. He sold his likeness to an impersonator who then died with the paperwork of this deal, and well, that ended up being destroyed in a fire apparently. So he can't prove that he's Elvis, nor the guy who died who isn't Elvis, who was Elvis. And there's all these different people, characters, if you will, in the nursing home who have their own paranoia. Like there's an African American man who says he was originally white because they were doing experiments on him. Yeah, it's funny. And he was just supposed to be like eccentricities of an old person type thing. And he's like totally like it totally happened. And he's like, okay then, what drugs are you on, Mike? So Bubba Hotep is taking out people in the nursing home, and the old people that are in the nursing home decided, or the assisted living place, decide to join forces and try and take out Bubba Hotep for themselves. And it's just really funny because like their way to fight evil, protect themselves and the nursing home, or is it? I'm not sure if it's an assisted living site or a nursing home. I think it's about both. And they're like one of the scenes. It's like they're like got canes and like Zimmer frames and stuff, but they're still badass and they're still not taking no for an answer from this demon, what demon, this mummy that's coming to take their lives. It is a low budget movie, and well, not really. It's for CGI and stuff, yeah, but it still does the job. It's funny and it's silly and it's not supposed to be taken seriously in the slightest. And that's one of the things that we like about a lot of Bruce Campbell films and things that he's featured in, that they are kind of light-hearted, gory, yet light-hearted, but still. And he seems to pull it off easy. It wasn't, like I said, a big budget. It has a cult following like Bruce Campbell himself. He literally has a following. So if you want to see Elvis the King fight some undead evil mummy in a nursing home with some memorable lines and far-fetched storylines, then this is one for you. The Conspiracy of the World. Ghost of Mars. Now, this is a John Carpenter classic. Natasha Henstridge, we all know her from Species, the goddess in Species. Ice Cube from Friday, and also the rapper who's in NWA. They also have a very early typecast Jason Statham, who again playing a military guy, even back then when this movie was out, which was like in 2006. All these military dudes go to pick up a prisoner for transport, and the year is 2176. And when they arrive to the planet and try and pick up this prisoner from the pickup point, things aren't what as they seem, and the crazies are in charge. Who knew this movie would be this way? It's very, very dark in the music. If you were blind, you would know that we ain't in Kansas anymore. It's very John Carpenter with the mood of the music, the pitch of the music, and just the sound. It's not got Halloween vibes, but from the theme song with John Carpenter when he created the actual Michaels type of music was when he was playing bongos. It gives you that feel that he obviously maybe have tapped into that for this movie as well. Between like I said, the dark music, you're going to be in for a wild ride. Gory action. Also, the main bad guy has the best look. There's some amazing SFX makeup and prosthetics on the ghosts and demons of Ghosts of Mars that makes cosplaying this so much fun and it has so many possibilities. So the faculty, Josh Hartnett, Famke Janssen, Jordana Brewster, and Claire Duval, lots of good people in this. This came out in the 90s. I seen this as a teenager. I remember going to the cinema to see it. It has an amazing soundtrack. Korn singing Another Brick in the Wall and Marilyn Manson and things like that. So it's about that time where like new metal was actually taking off. So you had like kind of soundtracks that were like this for sci-fi horror. If you haven't seen The Faculty, it's kind of similar to things like Puppet Master, and I can see Donald Sull's face right now and he's pointing at me. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So it's very, very like this, but it's kind of brought into the 21st century. The opening is basically of the movie is like a high school, and it kind of looks innocent, but it never is. It's secondary school or high school. A new girl start, ding ding, new girl, and the only person to say it's her is the one who is reading a horror novel, which is Claire Duval. And talking about the Puppet Master, again, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, so I was really fascinated with her in this, and as well she's in Ghosts of Mars. I think because she looked different and wasn't like the usual Hollywood actress, she was incredibly talented and her portrayal of her characters felt real. And being a weirdo myself, well, she was like hot, of course, so it was that hot alternative girl. So just like this movie had so many similarities, people start to change. They become more a robotic version of themselves. They start drinking tons of water, as aliens seem to do. Oh shit, spoiler, and acting all Donald Sutherland. We have Robert Patrick, who was a T-1000 and T2, and he was also Agent Doggett in the X-Files, and he was Peacemaker's dad. So if you weren't aware of who he is, you should. He has a very distinct voice and a very distinct look, and he seems to be typecasted, even though he's been in so many different movies and stuff. He's just an amazing actor. He is playing the coach in the high school and he ends up one of the collective, and well, that kind of did things to me. I don't know about you. Well, even Salma Hayek's in it, and she being and just being herself. If she was my school nurse, I would be sick a lot because she plays the school nurse. Also, Usher's in this movie as well. The pop star, he started going into acting, and this is one of the movies that he was in. This movie goes from mystery to sci-fi to horror. It's Robert Rodriguez at the helm of this movie, and it was also it was adapted by Kevin Williamson, who gave us Dawson's Creek and other teen slasher movies, such as I Know You Did Last Summer, and he's done adaptations of Scream as well. So not only it's not people seem to think it's just like a teenage movie, because round about in the 90s you had like American Pie and things like that. It was very, very teen slasher, teen comedy, teen everything round about this time. So it was a bit different, and it brought in aspects of, like I said, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Puppet Master, any movie sort of that's about possession and taking over a planet, etc. Usually for water or for something else. It's definitely not our technology because we're usually behind. It's usually something like a resource like water. It was very good for 1999, or in the 90s, should I say, but I would still watch it to this day. So if you want to relive your teens with new metal and the soundtrack and how life was much simpler back then let the good times roll and get some faculty on for you. So we have Blair Witch 2, The Book of Shadows. This gets absolutely hated and slated by everybody. I think Lunar did as well. He slated it and I went raging about it. So then again, this movie has a special place in my heart because again, the soundtrack is System of a Down, Marilyn Manson, because Marilyn Manson's song actually opens the movie Disposable Teens, Queens of the Stone Age as well. So this isn't like the found footage film that is like the original Blair Witch. It kind of does have, they've tied that in at the end because of the way the story goes, but it wasn't based on just found footage. It was people going out to the woods that are with a tour guide who's obsessed with the Blair Witch, and it's two documentarians who are trying to, like, is it hysteria or not type thing from the original movie. and what's real and what's not, basically. And they have like documents and things like that, and they've been talking and back and forth with this tour guide. There's also Goth Girl, who people say I look like when I was a teen. Very attitude, very like me as well. Makeup similar, but I don't see the resemblance. But it could be any goth, to be honest. And we have a kind of wicking type, hippie type girl, very laid back, and again the tour guide. And they go out to the woods to get drunk. They set up their cameras and they have a drink and it looks like they're smoking weed and stuff like that. And they're just like out their faces. I do think they might have been taking something else because they see a lot of hallucinogenic things when they're, well, that's how they are described by the sheriff. They basically wake up the next day and other tour guides have been killed from another group and some actual, is it students, or they're there on holiday basically, and their footage, their cameras were like destroyed and things like that. And when they watch the footage, it doesn't match up with what the sheriff and the police department have found. But what I liked about this movie when it came out, because it came out in VHS and also came out in DVD, was it, or is it just VHS? But you could put it backwards. It must have been DVD as well. They could put it backwards, and it was an Easter egg where you could find clues, which was really fun because it had, again, Easter eggs weren't just random scenes that were found or random little things. You actually had to physically become part of the hysteria of this movie by actually reversing the tape and things like that and searching for clues that way. So it was like a immersive experience, a visual experience, and you had to use your brain and also you had to be aware. It was good for then. You don't really get very many movies actually doing this type of thing like ever again. People do watch for things and people do pick up things, but actually physically putting something in there for you to find like a wee mystery of its own makes the movie, in my honesty, great. It's terrible sometimes because they portray mental health fucked up as they do. They don't really, they kind of put them all together and try and make them and pull it off basically, which is, I don't like when they do that in movies. And neither does Lunar either. So Cherry Falls. So again, teen movies at this time, as I said, they were huge. And there was random stories and plots and usually all the same, but this one's got Brittany Murphy, RIP. I loved her. She was such a really good, talented actress, and I miss her a lot. So the town is Cherry Falls, but there is a killer killing off virgins, yes, virgins, and the story unravels that a young teen was attacked by a bunch of popular teen boys, and she become pregnant. The child is the boy who becomes tormented by his mother, obviously traumatized by how he became to be, and instead of giving the baby up for adoption, she abused her son. He takes it upon himself to become her and kill off all the virgins, but wait, one of the virgins, the children of the men who attacked her, is a teen. But is it her or someone else? So all the teens in town are like, fuck this shit, I don't want to die. So what do they decide to do to save themselves? But have a big fuck off orgy, of course. Because then no one could be killed by the crazy knife wielding psycho. Audrey wins, of course. We find out that the sheriff was in fact the father of this boy and that his daughter, who's played by Brittany Murphy, is the next victim. So finding out your dad is a dick and then did this and resorting to having an orgy for your first time sounds like the only solution yet again. It was 1999 in the time of teen slashers and exploring their sexualities in a time where it was okay and not to be judged also. It was when teens had the balls and actually tried to save themselves than offer themselves up. Everything around you is a weapon, exactly as I would do. Sleepwalkers, again, another Stephen King. Sorry about this, but it's going to happen. It's another creepy one from Stephen King. There are these creatures called sleepwalkers who are afraid of cats. Yes, that's right, cats of all things. Yet there are only two of them left, mother and son. We know them as the Borg Queen, and her son is Leo from Charm. We also have Madge Amick, who is also in Riverdale, and she can tie a knot and a cherry stem with only her mouth. Yes, talented lady. She was in Twin Peaks and Witches of East End. It follows the story of they are the only ones of their kind and they have to have a fucked up relationship. Of course you do, as you can imagine, keeping it all in the family to stay alive. They must train young, beautiful women and they flee and end up in a small town as they were trying to escape the law. They're surrounded by cats that scare them. They need the life force to survive, and they can change their appearance when they have drained enough life force. It's okay for the 90s, same with the makeup and the effects. There are things that aren't great, but again, it's the 90s, but enough to make it more acceptable than some earlier Stephen King adaptations, and it just makes you laugh with all the cats. Dreamcatcher, again, another Stephen King. I know, obsession much. Again, he seems to have so many of his stories that end up straight to video. But that doesn't mean that they are bad, it just means that they weren't for the blockbuster red carpet Hollywood. But it doesn't mean that they aren't anywhere near as good as them. This movie has so many nice and innocent moments of friendship and being there for people. We love memories and experiences, all for one and one for all. Good actors, Morgan Freeman, Thomas Jane, Jason Lee, Damian Lewis and Timmy Olyphant, to name a few, but these guys are childhood friends, not Morgan Freeman, Jane, sorry, Jason Lee, Damian Lewis and Timmy Olyphant are friends, they're childhood friends. And every year they take an annual trip to the cabin in the woods, because never ends well going to the cabin in the woods. But this trip is different, and they find an entity wandering around. It's a bit far fetched for even Stephen King, but a lot of people take his writing and make a great job. But it seems to be that this makes no sense a big chunk of the movie. So it's watchable, but I love it because it is weird and obscure, but it kind of goes off in tangents, and it's like they've not kind of tied their strings together to make the story like bulletproof. They've literally left so many plot holes that the movie can be a plot hole in itself. I like the way they've got Damon Lewis's character because they show his mind like a massive library full of cabinets and stuff like that, like research, and you're trying to find, that one memory or one instance. He's actually physically in his own mind searching for the answer they need, and that's what it's kind of like for me on a daily basis. It was nice and memorable. Phantoms, which is Dean Koontz, a very, very young-ish Ben Affleck. A dark-haired Rose McGowan in this too. It's based in a small town. Shock horror. Ben Affleck is an ex-FBI agent who stops being an FBI agent because he kills a kid. So therefore, he becomes a sheriff. He's demoted himself. He'd still be using a gun at some point. So why actually go into being anything in law enforcement is beyond me. But that's not the gist of the story. People are being taken out at a ski resort, but it's not a serial killer like they think it is. Everybody thinks it's a serial killer. It's a little peculiar, but after some discussion with a college professor, they come to realise the town isn't a victim of a serial killer, but an ancient entity. Sound familiar? That is wiping people out in the town. The movie gives me very Storm of the Century vibes, but again, a few Stephen King and Dean Koontz stories kind of overlap, even though they can be so different, yet when they're adapted for the screen, they end up similar to each other. It's just weird. Science, brain power, and the government all working together to take it out, yet I don't have much positive outlook for that list of people helping out. Again, another Dean Koontz. Hideaway. Jeff Goldblum is in a fatal car accident and he ends up dead for a couple of hours. And then they bring him back. Yeah, because that's realistic. And now he's connected to this weird guy who he thinks he's just seeing him, but it's like stalking his dreams and his thoughts. And he's always seen talking to beautiful women, but it's like Jeff Goldblum seeing what he's doing through the killer's eyes type thing. So he can't do anything to stop him. He just thinks it's maybe like a reaction to what happened to him because the machine that brings him back. He sees his daughter, who's played by Alicia Silverstone. The guy who's playing the serial killer is actually Jeremy Sisto, who actually plays Elton in Clueless with Alicia Silverstone. So this is one of her earlier films, and again, she was typecasted as the kind of bimbo teenager for ages after Clueless, but this shows her totally different and quite early on in her career. Like I said, Jeremy Sisto is looking at his daughter and he's talking to her, and he's basically a race to stop him from taking out his daughter. And again, the connection seems to have happened when he was dead, and then when he brought him back, they were both connected. Dean Koontz begged for his name not to be used when this film had been adapted because he found it very far-fetched. He said that he didn't want his name or his likeness used or anything like that because he thought the adaptation was shite, basically, which again, I've not read that book, but if the writer himself is saying that he doesn't want his name attached to it, it means it's probably the backbone of the stories came from Hideaway, but they've adapted it terribly. And well, I liked it again, not for the fact that it's Dean Koontz, but It's just because Jeff Goldblum, he's a really peculiar guy in a good way, and to see him like use his peculiarities in this film in a darker way than you would see him with other things that he's been in recently. I love his eccentricities. More of this at some point would be good. I'd like to see him as a serial killer though. Okay, John Carpenter again. Again, this is one of my favourite John Carpenters, if not my favourite John Carpenter film ever. It's called The Prince of Darkness. With a homeless possessed Alice Cooper, no doubt. Also, Donald Pleasance is in it, who is a horror granddaddy. A rundown abandoned church in a rundown city, a bunch of grad students and scientists have believed to have found an unusual artifact in this strange liquid. And well, this is a John Carpenter movie, so the liquid isn't gold. It isn't good. It's not a good thing, no shit. The liquid starts to infect people, and the liquid there is an ancient, powerful evil. Not only is the church being abandoned, there is also this mystery of why this strange container that contained the artifact, the church was protected by a private sect. That's the job of them, was to stop it from ever escaping or being found, etc. Yet, dun dun dun, the essence of Satan? No shit. They kept it in a shitty church in a shitty container, didn't leave, and in case of an emergency, if all the priests die, call this number to ask what you should do in the event of an emergency. Definitely do not try and open it, or move it, or touch it, yet they do, because, let's face it, they're humans, and they can't be fucking trusted. At all. It seems it's a freaking church. Hello? Then, if you thought Satan was scary, then Daddy Satan is what he's going to unleash, and he will bring hell on earth. He is the anti-god, apparently, and when some of the students and people in the church that decide to kick the hornet's nest start to become possessed, because the liquid is infecting everything in its path, including Alice Cooper, who's in it, by the way. I'm not just randomly saying that. They become crazy protective of the artifact. Of course they are, because they're infected, part of the collective, and it's content and will stop at nothing to help bring forth Satan's daddy. So beware the goo, people. Beware of the goo. The music, again, very John Carpenter fashion. You know, we ain't in Kansas anymore when we hear it, and that's when you know that something is brewing and something shit is going to go down. We have Dead Alive / Brain Dead, and again, Peter Jackson's been getting mentioned a lot because, again, I don't know how he managed to go from the movies he did to doing Lord of the Rings. So Peter Jackson, when he was awesome, before he sold out, he made incredible gore with weird stories and far-fetched characters and narratives. Meet the Feebles, not safe for kids. These puppets are well not for the faint-hearted, and there is a sing-along. Then we have Bad Taste, messed up puke drinking aliens, and Brain Dead / Dead Alive. There's two different names to this movie because it was called Dead Alive, I think, in New Zealand and America, I believe, but it was called Brain Dead in the UK. Poor Lionel looks after his mother, hasn't really had much of a life, as his mother has never let him live. She becomes infected by a monkey rat thing, and then she goes on a munching spree, infecting many individuals, and Lionel has to babysit them all, including his mother, including a weird zombie baby who will cause his havoc between him trying to keep the nurse and the zombie priest from having snoo on the dining room table in front of all the other zombies, partaking in the voyeurism. Lionel is subjected to this too, and this is when Lionel finds himself love finally, of all times, when his mother ends up undead and more of a handful. The Frighteners, again, Peter Jackson. No shit, Sherlock. Peter Jackson again cast such good people in this movie. Michael J. Fox can see people after an RTA accident. He ends up being able to see dead people, and he uses his psychic connection for bad. As you can imagine, people think he's a con artist when he's not. But he's basically hounded by all the spirits that either haven't moved on or chose to stay, basically, especially in the local cemetery. He gets shouted at by the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket, and it's really, really funny. And what Michael J. Fox's character has to do, which is Frank has to stop these people that are being killed. A number shows up on their forehead similar to a bunch of murders that happened a long, long time ago, but the killer is supposed to have been dead, taken out by, I think, the electric chair, I think. It's actually played Jake Busey, and you know the Buseys, you can tell they have a significant look about them. They all look the same. He has come back, and his girlfriend at the time, or his girlfriend, she is like helping him successfully take out people because they had a dream of Bonnie and Clyde, but like be killing people. So it's funny and horror and just silly. The cover is really cool. It's like green, glowy writing with like kind of like a spirit type pushed against it, like a sheet type thing. Again, it's a really good movie. Again, very, very underrated. And maybe he tried to capture his essence again, but he has failed. So we have the next one. We have The Green Room. This is Sir Patrick Stewart, and he was actually freaked out after reading this script. I don't know why, but apparently he found it incredibly, I think, violent, and just the way the psychological aspect of what happens in this film. So again, not scary, but makes you think, and I understand why. Unnerving, I found it was a slow-paced movie and a bit all over the place, and the story was a bit choppy, but it was good to see Sir Patrick Stewart doing something else other than what he's usually typecasted for, whether he's Star Trek or his Shakespearean thespian actor. He's a wonderfully talented, exceptional actor, whether he's saving all kinds in Star Trek to making us laugh with edibles and blunt talk, or mind melding us as Professor X, or giving it loudly on stage in the theatre. He is an actor of many, many talents, and there isn't many of these exceptional beings left. So seeing him in a movie that isn't his usual wheelhouse was fantastic. But it wasn't the best for me, as it was a wee bit real, but not horror, but the violence. I think that's what actually makes it more horror-like because of the violence. So in a grumpy type of a music venue, a punk band is playing and they witness a very violent murder by a bunch of skinhead neo-Nazis in their bar. And it's the visual that is so graphic and having to be able to survive as they're being hunted by the people who committed the murder because they don't want any evidence. And the evidence is the people who witnessed the crime. So they can't have it leaking. So they've got to get everyone and everything who was involved in the venue. They need to be taken out. So now when I go to gigs and it's weird and dangy places, which is not too often, thankfully, I think, where are the exits and how far is the car? So if you want to watch that, that's just showing Sir Patrick Stewart his talents in another genre of movie. We have Afterlife, which is technically a thriller, but it has some horror aspects, especially with the afterlife. It's psychological as well. Christina Ricci and Liam Neeson, also Justin Long is in this as well. It's dark, it's surrounded by death. Liam Neeson is a funeral director and he's got a unique gift. Christina Ricci has been killed in an RTA, which is a road accident. Even though she doesn't feel as if she is dead, this is him telling her that she's transitioning into the afterlife. And he's going to prepare her for it, yet she doesn't want to let go. And it's her journey on how to get there and how to let go. Liam Neeson has this way of showing her that in fact she is dead and she needs to let him do his job and take care of her so she can move on onto the other world, the afterlife. But she thinks she is trapped and that he is keeping her there. Justin Long, who is Christina Ricci's boyfriend in the movie, he feels that Liam Neeson's character isn't who he seems to be and something isn't quite right. So being trapped in a funeral home with her and Neeson's character, she has all these trails within herself that she takes upon herself and making the transition harder for not only herself but her family and her boyfriend because she won't let him do his job and use his gifts to make her transition smoother. And it's all about her not coping with the fact that she's no longer alive and that she has to let go of this life as she is no longer living. Very thriller, horror and mystery, a bit of a mindfucking parts, but Christina Ricci is such a wonderful, talented actor that I'm glad to be part of a generation that watched her grow up into the magnificent woman she has become. Ginger Snaps. Now, this movie is a trilogy that shows how these sisters, Bridget and Ginger, were always going to have the ending that they were supposed to have. They were always going to be together and they were going to always end up as werewolves. As long as they were together, they were never alone and they will always have each other's backs. They were weird together, they were obscure, and they actually were very creative. The very first movie starts them reenacting like a horror scene from like events that could happen, like falling onto a fence and stuff like that, for reality type horror gore type thing. So it starts off like that, and you see them taking pictures and things like that in stills, and it's them doing their own SFX and their own scenes and stuff because they're right into obviously creating their own strange and unusual. They are sisters, Ginger and Bridget, and at school Were all weird and, well, wonderful. They aren't afraid to embrace their own style and their own personalities for the dark and strange and unusual. Most people love Ginger. I love Bridget. She's incredibly smart, and her peculiar ways make her more beautiful than Ginger, in my opinion. Ginger becomes a werewolf, and we see her transform, but slowly how the lichen genes start to change her and make her go from teenage angsty girl to badass bish werewolf, and how she holds all the power and isn't afraid to use it to her advantage. All three movies, including the prequel, delve into the past and the future, showing that their paths were always supposed to bring them to where they are today, but they are together. I think this hits close to home, as myself was and still obsessed with death and the unknown, the horror, the gore, etc. And another reason why I love this podcast so much, that I can share with you who choose to listen to the creations that are brought up here, and that I love what I do here, and it's great to have people around me and us that are similar, and it's okay to be weird, embrace your strange people. From Dusk Till Dawn, the description of this movie made me say watch it now, because it's just weird, because the way the movie starts out, it's not how you expect it to turn out. Tarantino, as you've never seen him before, and George Clooney for that matter, just gives it a chance. Just give it a chance. Even that infamous line by Juliette Lewis, you know, the one about the cat. I'm being clean here because this channel is many things, but ASMR triple X adult it is not. But vampires, violence, and action. You also have Salma Hayek and that snake and that look. The movie takes a turn that you never expected, but in a good way. That's this movie. It's one of a kind, and I don't think anyone else has managed to take George Clooney and make him as much of a badass as he was in this movie. Even Cheech Marin, a speech outside the venue with Sex Machine and his crotch gun. It's got so much visuals of did that just happen? The sleaziness of the bar, the sleaziness of Tarantino, and everyone else in the twisted turn. Just makes sense. Explaining this movie that it's of two brothers on the run from the law, and they drag an innocent family. They have commandeered their vehicle and kidnapped them in the process, to how this movie ends. Some people don't get it, and the people that do love it, and it doesn't get the recognition it should. But in my heart, it does. Give me this Clooney back. What are the movies you feel are underrated and don't get the recognition and praise that they truly deserve? Did you enjoy this podcast? Let us know in the comments below about movies that you think should get more appreciation and more attention. Whether it's from the actors in it, the story, the effects, anything, let us know in the comments below. Tell us in the comments below though, if you like content like this, remember to go check us out on the Confessions from the Dark Side social media platforms, which are Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Amazon Music, Spotify, and Buzzsprout. Let us know what you think over on our social media. And let us get chatting about this topic, all the topic. Let's grow our community. Let's spread how awesome the horror community is. If you want to get to know us as individuals, then you can check us out on the links below. I am Darcy Darkness, and my channel is called Behind the Mask Reviews, and I have a YouTube and Instagram, a Twitch, and a Kick. Lunar has YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram. If you need to reach out to us at any point, confessionsfromthedarkside@gmail.com is the email to contact us on for the channel. But I have my own email address, which is behindthemaskreviews@gmail.com, and Lunar is lunarxrising@gmail.com if you want to reach out to us as individuals. And that was Confessions from the Dark Side present Underappreciated Scares. And I am Darcy Darkness, and I will see you in the next one. Laters.